Yeah, the first time I heard Phish was at a friend of mine's house in, in my area here. And he lived kind of like in a very wooded part of the canyon. And it was after school, I think it was in 10th grade. And we went over to his house to like smoke some grass or something like that. And I think we smoked a joint together. And he put on Phish, and I didn't know what it was, but and he was just obsessed with it. He was like, "Oh, and listen to the tone and listen to all this." And I remember being like, "I don't get it." My first reaction to this band that ultimately would be just like on infinite repeat for me for the next couple of years was, "I don't get it. I don't understand why you like this." It sounds confused to me. So then it just kind of, I let it go. I didn't really think too much about it. And then another friend was listening to it, and I was listening to it a little bit more, and I started to clue into some of the musicality around it and kind of like parse out what was happening. That's something that I've always loved to do with music. Even before I myself was a musician, I loved to try and like take the radio apart, so to speak, and see if I could put it back together. And with Phish, there were elements of it that I could deconstruct, but then there was a lot of stuff, and still to this day, where I'm like, I actually don't understand why you made that decision. I don't understand how you got from A to Q here. This doesn't make sense to me. And that usually is an indicator of a band that I'm really going to enjoy, is if they have a kind of a perplexing effect on me. Um, so yeah, I honestly don't remember what song was playing. I think when I first heard Phish, but I think it was stuff from the album Picture of Nectar. And so that ended up being my first kind of like deep dive into the band. Um, and then I started to go see them play when they would come into town. And then really the first times I would travel, I used to go and see the Grateful Dead with friends of mine. I'm old enough that I've seen the Grateful Dead a handful of times live. um, but yeah, Phish would come through town, or they'd be someplace like in Northern California or something, and I would get in the van with friends, and we'd go up there and we'd camp and we'd watch them play. And part of what I ended up falling in love with about it was not only the music. The music I thought was so clever and weird and funny and virtuosic, but there was an environment around it, and it was the people that it attracted that, to me, at that time in my life, felt otherworldly. It felt like I was walking into another universe. So there was a lot of meat on that bone, so to speak. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think Phish had an undeniable influence on our band. I don't think that's the most intuitive uh, one for most people to go to. I don't think they would listen to Incubus or watch one of our shows and be like, "This band was influenced by Phish." But I think maybe some of our more dedicated listeners might agree if they had listened to Phish and listened to, oh yeah, like even especially the earlier stuff, like you were saying, we were noodling a lot more. We call that noodling. Um, and we do enjoy kind of like remixing our own songs on occasion, and that was inspired by Phish and the Dead, and but also bands like Primus. Primus was another huge influence on our band early days, and in a lot of ways, our band wouldn't exist if it weren't for the influence of Primus and Phish. And Mr. Bungle was a big influence on us, and God, even bands that were more kind of like above ground, like Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and stuff like that. They all kind of, leached into our process. And still to this day, I love all of those bands dearly. I have a very special place in my heart for all of those bands. But yeah, I haven't had that experience myself because I'm a terrible guitar player. I feel like if I was going to have a Trey Anastasio moment, I'd have to like be good at the guitar. So maybe I suppose Michael has had his fair share of Trey Anastasio moments where Trey is he's the consummate musician. He's one of the most talented, prolific guitar player, shredder dudes that I can imagine. Um, but there is something to me that is the most Trey Anastasio is when he'll be in amongst like just a full blown maelstrom of noodling, and then he'll just grab onto one note and just bend it for what seems like an eternity through all of the other kind of like cacophonic noodling that's happening around him. And to me, and then he kind of, he looks up and you see the underside of his beard. And that to me is, I have seen Mikey in those moments actually. So I think I could safely say that Mike has had a few Trey Anastasio moments, if even in like a cosplay type of thing. Mikey and Jose and I have been to, I would guess, no less than a dozen Phish concerts in our lives. Um, and I myself have never met Trey. I think Mikey has met Trey. Our good friend Brendan O'Brien, who produced 3 Incubus records. I would need to do some math on that one, but also, who I wrote and recorded the Sons of the Sea record with. Brendan did a bunch of the Trey Anastasio solo records. So there, we have some very close mutual friends and not too many degrees of separation between us, but I still haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, but I hear he's a nice dude. So maybe one of these days. Rift was a big one for me as well from 1993. So yeah, Rift, Picture of Nectar, and Junta. I'm guessing it's pronounced. And still to this day, those are like my favorite Phish albums. I really loved Hoist, which was Phish's attempt at a more sort of like a songwriter type thing. Like it had more commercial elements to it, but I really liked it. I remember a lot of fans were being like, man, this sounds too commercial, but I something's good, it's good. It doesn't matter to me if there's a big chorus. Sometimes, in fact, that's kind of awesome when there's a big memorable chorus on it. But yeah, those 3 records for sure.